Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. Let's turn the sound up here so you can all hear me properly. And give it a minute or two to see who's on this morning and who's awake at this time on a Monday morning. And give it a minute or two here and see who connects with us. Hopefully everybody had a good weekend and enjoyed the bit of sunshine that we finally got on Friday and Sunday. I was out in the garden. It was delightful, and it makes a huge difference to my state of mind for sure. All right, let's see who we've got this morning. Good morning, good morning. How is everybody this morning? Doing well, I hope. Enjoying the sunshine. Fantastic. Good morning, Paula. Hope all is well with you. I was crazy weather this weekend. Friday was delightful. I was out in the garden, and then Saturday it snowed. And I was like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's happened to spring. I want the sun to come back. But hopefully the rest of this week now will be nice and we will have no more of the white stuff. So this morning we are going to be talking about habits. So over the last month or so, we've all had some fairly significant changes to the way that we do things. Hi Christy, and that means changing the way that we do bits and pieces and changing basically our day-to-day habits. So I've had a few people ask about, well, how do I get back into a routine? How do I, I've got an opportunity now, I've got some opportunity to change a few things. How do I go about building some habits that are helpful, right? What do I do? And there's not really any difference in building habits now than there might otherwise be in terms of what you need to pay attention to. The only thing I would say is different now is that we don't always have the same amount of mental capacity. So I know for me, I'm not as productive as I might normally be because there's so much going on. Our brains are actually wired to be thinking about the pandemic partially all the time. So that reduces the amount of kind of mental capacity we've got to focus on things. So what I'd say in terms of the only difference from what I'm going to talk about is how much you bite off. So we do have a tendency as human beings to bite off more than is probably sensible or practical in a lot of cases. So, if you would normally try and do a couple of things, now's the time to practice one, right? Let's pick one thing that you want to build a habit around and then kind of go through the steps to get there. And once you feel like you've got that ingrained, well, then you can go ahead and pick something else and do that too. So if you've got any questions as I'm going through, please ask. As always, we'll save this and the video will get put up on the website and put in a few different places for you to reference after the fact. But if you've got any questions as you go through, I'll try and watch as I'm talking. So there's really 3 things that you need to have in place when you build a habit. So we're going to go through those 3 things. A couple of caveats though. So the first is, there is this adage that it takes 30 days to make a habit. I don't know if you've heard that saying. That's lovely as a guideline, but it's not actually accurate. So the research suggests it depends entirely on who you are and what you're trying to learn. So it can take as little as 20 days to build a habit and as many as 252. So 30 days is a good guideline for helping you think about the routine side of habit, which we'll talk about in a second, and that if you don't do it enough it won't stick. But please don't get to 30 days and be like, oh, I haven't managed to do this, so I'm not going to build a habit. It may take you longer depending on what you're trying to do and how complex it is for you to learn how to do it. So something like quitting smoking, for example, that has a whole bunch of addictive qualities, is not going to be something that you necessarily get to do in 30 days. So it depends largely what it is. But whatever you're trying to do, however long it takes you to kind of embed the habit, you need 3 things for it to work. So the first thing you need is a trigger to remind you to do it. So that sounds really simple, and in essence it is, but it's only one piece of the trio, right? So if you don't have all 3 aspects, then you can't make the habit stick. So the first thing is the trigger. So something needs to remind you to do whatever it is you're going to do. or ideally stop doing whatever it is you want to stop doing. So whether that's an alarm on your phone, whether that's a time of day that you know you're going to be doing it, whether that's a friend who gives you a nudge, whether you type something else that's going on in your life, there needs to be a cue for you. There needs to be a trigger for your brain to go, now is the time I should be doing whatever it is that you've set up, right? So a couple of examples I can think of. Right now, where a lot of us have moved to working from home, you know, we've lost some of the triggers that we might normally have around habits and routines. So you may have to recreate them. So I was chatting to somebody a week or so ago who said they were working from home and they'd started to get into the habit of wearing Lululemons, but they actually found that they weren't as productive. So now they get up and they put their work clothes back on to come to work, even though work is still in their house, because that's the trigger for the habits of productivity that then follow. So you may want to think about what triggers you already had going on for you that you've stopped doing and you want to bring back, or you might want to start a new habit, in which case you need a new trigger. I've been trying to get into the habit of meditation, which is something I've struggled with for quite a while in terms of creating that, embedding that habit. And so I've tied that to waking up in the morning. So it's the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning. That's my trigger to know right now is the time that I should be doing that. So you need that cue or that trigger. All right. So that's the first part. Then the second thing is you need to know exactly what it is you're going to do. And this is where people sometimes fall over because we're not specific enough. So if I just say, you know, when I wake up, I'm going to meditate, that's pretty broad and pretty vague for my brain. Like our brains are like specifics. So the clearer you can be on what exactly it is you're going to do, the more likely you are to do it. So I'm going to put the app on and listen to the Deepak Chopra and Oprah Winfrey meditation for 10 minutes in the morning when I first wake up, right? That is much more specific, and I'm much more likely to do that than just saying I'm going to wake up and meditate, which is quite big. Right. Similarly, you know, whatever that habit might be for you, you need to be really specific about how you're going to do it, when you're going to do it, what it looks like. If you just say, I will do X, the likelihood is you won't, your brain will go, that's sure, fine, whatever, and move on. So that's the second part. So very specific, clear understanding of what exactly it is you're going to do. And then the third thing that you need, which I think is the most important one really, is reward. Because what gets rewarded gets repeated. If we're not rewarded for doing something, we generally stop doing it. If there's no intrinsic benefit to us of doing something, our brains go, that's a waste of time, I'm going to stop doing it. And so you need a reward. Now, ideally, that reward is intrinsic. And what I mean by that is you get so much general enjoyment / benefit / happiness from doing whatever the habit is that you naturally, your brain goes, wow, that was great, I'm going to do that again. So, you know, ideally, if I'm trying to practice meditating, I love the meditation experience so much that my brain actually says, well, that's great, I'm going to absolutely keep doing that. Unfortunately, that's not always what happens. So, you know, even for meditation, which I generally enjoy, doesn't have enough of a kick for me, for my brain to go, yes, I'm going to wake up and every day that's something I'm going to prioritise. Other things, like being in my garden, absolutely. Meditation, not so much. And so that's where the external reward factor comes in. Something to recognise yourself for doing it, right? You're putting effort in to doing something that you haven't done before, which inherently is painful, right? You're taking effort away from doing something else to apply to this habit. You need to reward yourself for doing it. So whatever that looks like for you, Starbucks coffee, new pair of shoes bought online, don't know, whatever works, right? But there needs to be some reward that you manifest for following this habit. If you don't, your brain will go, this takes energy and effort and time, but I'm not getting anything back for doing it, so I'm going to stop. Right, so those are the three pieces that have to be in place. So you need a trigger, you need a very specific routine of what you're going to do, and you need a reward for doing it, right? And then you need to do it and keep doing it and keep rewarding yourself for a period of time until it becomes something that you don't think about doing as much, and that's when you know that it's really become a habit. So whatever it is, right, those are still the three pieces that you need. You need the cue, you need the routine specific, and you need the reward, right? And don't skip on the reward. There's a couple of other things I'd say that can be helpful. So if anyone finds themselves procrastinating on doing things, being a procrastinator, so I was procrastinating on something over the weekend, it's usually a sign that it feels big and tangly and complicated for us. Right? So we don't procrastinate on things that are small and simple. We procrastinate on things that we think are going to be difficult or painful. And so a lot of the time when we do coaching work, when we find people are procrastinating or they set a goal that they don't follow through on, it's usually for that reason. We've set something that's really big and then it feels really difficult for us to do, and so our brains keep going, yeah, that's nice, but I'll put that over here until I figure it out. Right? So if you find that you've set a habit or there's something that you want to build as a habit, but you kind of keep putting it off, it might be that you've picked something too big, right? And that you need to break that down into a smaller step towards that end game. And that you can work on that instead. So I keep coming back to the meditation one, but it is genuinely a thing I'm trying to do and I find quite difficult. If I said, I'm going to become, I'm going to meditate every day, like I'm going to become the master meditator, that's way too big for my brain. There's no way my brain's going to get its head around that. I don't get enough intrinsic reward out of doing it. I've got loads of other things going on. Don't have a huge amount of mental capacity with COVID right now. Like, that's not going to fly. But sitting down once a day and doing a 5-minute or 10-minute meditation, much smaller, right? So picking something that is a smaller step towards where you want to get to can mean that you stop procrastinating. So if you find yourself putting stuff off, go back and check on what's the size of the habit that you're trying to create here, and is there a smaller kind of baby step towards that habit that you can do that will bring closer to you to where you want to get to without kind of blowing your brain. So procrastination shows up for sure. The other bit is, I talked a bit about reward already, so we need that reward to keep doing a habit. If you find yourself doing it for a bit and then dropping off, you're probably not getting enough reward. So it's time to up it. So that sustaining of a habit comes because it's something, well, one, either built in as wiring and muscle memory and we don't think about it anymore, but usually because we get such a benefit out of doing it, it becomes something that we rely on and turn back to. So if you find you do it for a little bit, but then you can't sustain the energy and the effort of doing it, that's usually about, I'm not getting enough reward to make it worth my while. So go back to, what am I giving myself for doing this? Why do I want to do it? What's the benefit to me of doing it? And what am I going to get when I do it, so that that kind of benefit is high in our heads. So if you're procrastinating on doing it, it's probably because it's too big. If you can't sustain the habit, it's probably because you're not getting enough reward out of it and you need to clap and cheer more. Now, some of the habits we have to build are not ones with intrinsic reward, right? So even right now, getting up and going to work in the morning is a habit I have to have. I like what I do, but it's not as exciting as going out into the garden and growing my vegetables. So I need to reward myself when I do things, give myself nice moments. If I put in a good full day's work and I'm productive, what treat am I going to give myself at the end of the day? Aha, so Chrissy has a question. So thinking oppositely, are there things you can do to break bad habits? So the challenge with bad habits is once you have wiring, it never goes away. So a habit is essentially you've made connections in your brain for doing something. And so those connections exist and you know, electricity goes through that connection all the time. You can't remove connections from your brain. So once it's there, it's there. What you have to do is two things. One is about awareness, which I'll come back to, and the other is about adding. So rather than trying to stop a habit, right, stop doing something, changing or amending a habit or adding to a habit is easier. So if you think about smoking, because most people can relate to that as a concept they see, we don't tell people generally to stop, right? What we say instead is substitute, usually. So go and chew the gum or wear the patch or put a patch on or do something to distract yourself. So they're not saying point blank stop doing it. They're amending the habit or changing the habit. And so that's a better strategy because you can't just take the wiring out of your brain. So if you find you've got a habit that's not helpful for you, rather than saying, I'm going to stop doing that. So again, I'll use a personal example, because most of you know me pretty well. Eating after 8 o'clock. Not great for my waistline, particularly not when I'm staying home all the time. Saying I'm going to stop doing that and just try and kind of do it cold turkey, not super easy. So two things. One, monitoring yourself, right, becoming aware of when you do it is really important, and there's no real substitute for doing that other than you clocking, I just did it again, right, because that starts to build your brain's awareness of habits that kind of go unrecognized. And then how do you change it? So rather than saying I'm not going to eat, I'm switching that for I'm going to paint my nails, or something else specific, I'm going to go for a walk. But pick something that's specific again, because if you don't pick specific, you won't do it, right, and amend the habit rather than trying to tell yourself you're just going to stop doing it straight away, because that's unlikely to happen. Unfortunately, based on the training that I've done, the simplest way of stopping a habit is removing it from your world, right? But that's not always doable. So, you know, for smoking, the simplest way to stop smoking is to not have any cigarettes around you. But that's not always practical if you live with other people who smoke. Same with people who are trying to diet, right? It's easy to say I'm not going to be around cakes and pastries, but then someone brings something in to the house or to work or whatever, and there you go again. So if you can remove yourself from situations where that habit affects you, do, because that's the best singular way of doing it. Otherwise, build your awareness of when you do it and find an alternative way of tackling the trigger that's showing up, right? Does that help, Christy? Is that clear enough? Are there any other questions from anyone around building habits? Cool. Okay. I can't stress enough that I see a lot of people try and do multiple things at the same time. I see this a lot in the learning world too. Like, people will go on training programs and come back and go, I'm going to apply everything I learned yesterday. Our brains don't work that way. They really don't. So, you know, at best, your PFC, this part of your brain that does the heavy lifting here, it can handle kind of 3 to 5 things at any one time going on. So if you're trying to learn something new or change a habit, that's a lot of heavy lifting for your brain to do. Pick one thing, be really specific about what it is, get small. I can baby step, I can do that quite easily, and then build on it, right? And then you've got a much better chance of getting to where you're going. The old adage of eating the elephant one bite at a time totally applies when it comes to building habits or changing habits. All right, so I'm going to recap 3 things. You need a cue, you need a very specific action. What exactly are you going to do, and not too big or you'll procrastinate, right? And you need a reward to thank yourself for doing it. And again, if you don't have enough of a reward, you probably won't sustain the habit, so make sure your reward is really clear. If you're trying to break a bad habit, if you can remove it, that's the best way. If you can't remove it, become aware of it and amend it. So adding is better than stopping. You telling your brain to stop is really hard, but changing or amending or adding wiring to our brains is easier. All right, so hopefully that helps. I know right now there's lots of people trying to figure out routines and habits at home, so pick one that's on your list and work on that for a little while and see where you get to, and make sure that there's enough reward to keep you keeping at it if it's beneficial to you. If there's any questions you have specifically, like if there's a particular habit that you've been trying to build for a while or a particular routine that you're struggling to get into, then please send me a note. I'm happy to chat. Don't charge for a 15-minute chat about something. So ping me a note. I'm happy to chat something through with you or to give you any other tips or advice that I have based on our experience. So hopefully that'll help with building some routines and habits for going forwards, whether we're in the middle of a pandemic or not. I hope everybody has a fabulous week and is super productive, whatever that looks like for you. And I will see you again next Monday for a different topic. If there's anything else you'd like me to talk about, or any topics that you think would be helpful during this period, or indeed related to engagement, happiness at work, all those types of things, please let me know. I'm always happy to talk about whatever works for everybody. All right, have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you all again on Monday. Thanks.